So let's move to our last topic of the day, which is an article written by Sterling Bennett, good friend of the show.
My guy.
And this one, actually, I have a quick little summary of it because I actually have the article up, which I'll read from in just a few minutes. But this is kind of what we're talking about here. So, an or former NFL coach had this to say about Kyle Shanahan. Kyle's going to be coaching for a for a long time. He's going to have another chapter in his career where he's going for 3 Super Bowls in a row. That's what a former NFL coach said.
Hmm.
Not only that, okay, not only that, but this former Super Bowl winning Patriots coach, okay, that's all we know about this guy, also said within the coaches in the league, no one thinks any less of Kyle Shanahan. The coach said it's ludicrous to think they should get rid of him. Andy Reid had these same criticisms early in his career, and now he's clearly in the conversation for the best coach ever. Kyle Shanahan criticisms are that he lost a couple of Super Bowls. Okay, do you know how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl? That is my point exactly. That we have people out there that are saying, Kyle can't get it done. I want Super Bowls. I want Super Bowls. But it's like, do you know how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl? You know how hard it is to get to the World Series? You know how hard it is to get to the NBA Finals? Probably easier than the other two sports, but still, it takes, and especially in football, it takes a massive amount of talent and skill to get to the Super Bowl multiple times. You're in a single elimination tournament.
Yep.
If you lose, it's over.
Yep.
Baseball and other sports, it's a series. You have a chance to come back, especially if you're down in the series. So I think people need to put that into perspective, that how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl in itself. The last thing he said was, if you throw rocks at Kyle Shanahan and want him fired, he's going to have a job in about 30 seconds. Andy Reid, it was that he couldn't win the big one, and now he's on the verge of winning 3 in a row. Kyle is going to be coaching for a long time. This was from the other quote. He's going to have another chapter in his career where he's going for 3 Super Bowls in a row. Aaron, what do you think about these comments from a former Super Bowl coach of the Patriots?
Hmm.
I don't know who that is. Could be a coordinator. Could be anybody. What do you think about these statements about Kyle Shanahan?
It's yeah, like that's the anti-narrative thing that a lot of us fans who aren't so to react so suddenly, when the Niners lose or they have a bad season, is that they're, if we're going to give the benefit of doubt to certain players who have had bad starts to their career and they've been able to turn it around, and we give them that caveat, then the same should be for Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan in his short NFL career has 2 Super Bowl appearances, man, and like that's really difficult to do. And I think uh, he's just getting started. The scary thing is that maybe it's not with the 49ers when a lot of that stuff happens. It could be with a different franchise, which is really sucky, and I don't want to think about that. But yeah, the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan is an incredible coach. There's been so much anti-Brock, anti-Kyle narrative for a couple of years now. Regardless of how the successful the Niners have been, it hasn't just been when we've been struggling and having a dog water season like we had, but it's been through the course of the last couple of years. And people tweet who's better than Kyle and who they would take as coach and all this other stuff. And I think the 49ers are a real fortunate franchise, and we're fortunate as fans to have someone like Kyle, someone like John, who
Mm.
are who are steadfast on giving us a winning product and putting the best possible team on the field year to year and putting the money into it what it takes to build a good team. So yeah, I'm all for it. I think Kyle eventually is going to break through. Who knows? Maybe it's next year, like you said, if we go all in and we give
Yeah.
ourselves 0 outs, and we go with we do everything with no excuses. Maybe we make it next year. But yeah, this whole thing that Kyle is a choke artist and that he's never going to win the big one and blah blah blah. I just think that's stupid talk, and he hasn't been coaching enough long enough to even come to that kind of conclusion. So it could be for another franchise. We don't know, but yeah, I'm down with Kyle and I'm down with the former NFL coach and what he had to say.
Well, I was talking to a couple of guys who cover the Philadelphia Eagles, and earlier this season, about maybe mid-season, I asked them. I said, "Hey, do you think that they're going to fire Nick Sirianni?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, he's going to go. He's going to get fired." But after the season that they just had, probably not. He's probably going to stick around because they had a very successful season. And so this comes back to the old talk where I remember back in the day listening to sports talk radio. Whenever your team sucks, so on the years where the Giants, the baseball Giants suck, or the Niners sucked, you know what you hear a lot of from people? You hear the statement, I'm just not really happy with the product that the NFL is putting out these days. It's just NFL is really bad this year. Baseball is just really boring. Football, it's just been really boring. I'm not happy with the product that they put out. It's just not very competitive. But then when your team is good, you hear the opposite.
Yeah.
Dude, the NFL is as best. It's as good as it's ever been. It's because your team is good, and you're into every single game. So it's kind of like, dude, stop. And so when you have a season in which things don't go your way, a lot of injuries, a lot of bad plays, a lot of bad play calling sometimes as well, people go, well, he's done. We got to get him out. Get Ben Johnson in here. Kyle's got to go.
I'm sick of Kyle. Nothing in the league.
I'm sick of Kyle. Well, next year, if he's in the playoffs and we're, 14-3, everyone's going to be like, dude, this team is so, it's going to be the opposite. Granted, some other people will, stay steadfast and stay on his case, but the majority of people will say, man, I love football, dude. It's so much fun. What a great product. Niners are so good. Kyle Shanahan is a great head coach. And then the moment they lose, he's got to go. He's got to go. But next year, they have to go all in because the Super Bowl is at home. I think that's a huge thing. And not only that, but this comes courtesy of Coach Yak. The Niners have 12 draft picks in this upcoming draft. You have 12 players possibly coming to the team to replace some of those players you got to get rid of or you're going to lose.
Plus free agency.
Plus free agency.
Yep.
And if we draft like we did this past draft, then it's going to be huge. Yeah. Now, Adam Peters was supposed to be one of our big, the executive that influenced the draft heavily. Well, the first season that we didn't have him in the draft, we hit on all these players.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you?
I was one of the people that were worried that we, losing Adam Peters was going to mean.
Now, I'm not taking anything with Adam Peters. Okay. He's had a very successful stint with the Commanders. But this, come on. Last season in the draft, every draft pick hit. The only person we lost was Jared Kingston because they had to let him go.
The Niners essentially landed like 5 starters via the draft last year.
Yeah. Renardo Green, Dominic Pooney. Even Tatum. Yeah, Malik Mustafa, thank you. Yep. Bethune was out there towards the end of the season. And I really believe that Tatum Bethune will soon replace D. Winters within a year or two. He'll be that next guy up behind probably Drake Greenlaw and Fred Warner.
Yep.
Just depends, So, but us having 12 draft picks is huge.
Yeah.
The Rams and the Seahawks only 7, the Cardinals 5. The 5 is not a lot.
The Niners could be a poverty franchise who all they care about is making money and don't care about putting a competitive team on the field. And that is not the 49ers.
It's not.
They have a head coach and a GM that are in lockstep, and they're constantly trying to make this team better. And I think a lot of people need to appreciate that based on some of the stuff that we dealt with after Harbaugh left. Mm-hmm. Nobody's saying that you have to be content with Super Bowl appearances. I hate that. I hate that weak, people are like, oh yeah, you're happy with just getting there and not winning. No, of course not. Who the hell would be okay with losing Super Bowls? But if you keep giving yourself enough opportunities to be there by putting a competitive roster on the field and bringing in the best coaches to coach those players and doing well by not, forfeiting draft picks. And the Niners are, in a way, the Niners are doing it the way you're supposed to do, which is, you draft your own players and you re-sign your own players and pay them the money they deserve. And then when guys get a little long in the tooth, you to keep it going, you draft new players, you bring them in, and it's just it's like a train that just keeps going. It never stops. And the way the Niners have been doing things for the last couple of years, I feel like last year was the first draft, or not first draft. I feel like last year's draft was such a key that it was so important that it hit based on the season that we had this past season. Like Andre, if the Niners would have missed on last year's draft and then had the season, there would be a lot of people with a lot less hope that the Niners can turn it around. So I'm excited. 12 draft picks, even if you hit on like 5 of them, if you hit on 5 of 12 and you bring in some free agents and stuff, I mean, the Niners could be right back in where they need to be next year, competing for a Super Bowl. So I'm usually a negative guy, but I'm looking forward to the Niners doing what they have to do to get back back at least in the conversation to win a championship.
So Graytone765 writes, we haven't won one in 30 years, and y'all talk like we some juggernaut.
So what are we supposed to do? Just sit here and cry?
Why don't you go be a fan of the Chicago Bears, who haven't been competitive in 30 years? Go be a fan of a team that doesn't even try. It has no salary. The team sucks year in and year out.
They don't put any money into the team. They don't draft well. They don't sign free agents. They're essentially here. They essentially have a franchise that makes money. At least the Niners are doing.
At least they're competitive.
Yeah,
they're in the playoffs and there's title games.
They weren't competitive this year, because this year was a total outlier. But they're going to use it as their argument.
And what annoys me the most, too, as we get ready to wrap things up, what annoys me the most, too, is that a lot of people will say, hey, look, what's his name? The coach of the Rams, McVay.
Yeah.
Sean McVay has had more successful seasons as a head coach than Kyle Shanahan.
He has.
Kyle Shanahan inherited a team that was a fucking bottom dweller. His first year, his quarterback was Brian Hoyer. McVay's first year, his quarterback was Jared Goff, who he later traded for Matthew Stafford.
Yep.
And you can't tell me that, dude, the Niners had to rebuild their entire franchise. And finally, I think it was year 3 or year 4 is when that's when they were able to start with Jimmy Garoppolo. And then what'd they do? They went to the fucking Super Bowl. So when you have talent around you, it's easy to be successful.